Hey everyone, this is Mike Gormley, and ironically, the show is called The Mike Gormley Show. I am very proud to have a gentleman on the show here today called Val Garay. And Val is one of the premier producers and engineers with a huge string of hits behind him. He has 100 gold records, last time we counted, gold or platinum. Has sold in the area of 125 million records over the years, which is astonishing, and even to him possibly.
To me, for sure.
Um, and I want to start out with a congratulations that's several decades late, but your work on Betty Davis Eyes is freaking brilliant. And that record to this day moves people. And um, so congratulations, decades later. Um, how does it feel to you? Is it just the past? Is it it's a huge moment in your career. I realize that. How does it feel from the inside?
I never, you never forget what it felt like and what it means to make a record of that magnitude. When I finished it, I knew it was a hit. I didn't know it was going to be the fifth or sixth biggest single of all time. Um, I had a pretty good clue. I mean, Kim was really close friends with Kenny Rodgers because she'd written songs for him and sang on a big hit with him. And so he came by the studio the day after we recorded it, and he was with Lionel, and Lionel Richie was producing him at the time. And we played it for Lionel, and Lionel said to me, "The only way that's not going to be a number one record is if Indian chanting becomes huge."
Well,
So I had a pretty good idea it was a hit, but not the magnitude it was. And I really didn't get a very good idea until about a week after it was released. And I had a conversation with Dick Williams, who was the head of promotion for EMI at the time. And I said, "Got any idea how much money you spent in promotion this week?" He said, "Not a dime." I said, "What do you mean, not a dime?" He said, "We got 111 P1 stations the first week out of 120. He said, "I didn't have to do a thing." So at that point, I knew we were off and running.
off and running. There was something about it, wasn't there? I mean, the arrangement, the writing, your production, her performance, everything just came together, which
You
just
know,
doesn't happen that
it
often.
was an interesting process because if I played you the demo, um, it wasn't anything like uh, the final record at all. It was completely different.
Hmm.
The thing that I fell in love with was the lyric. And so I also knew that Jackie DeShannon had written the song with Donna Weiss, and Jackie's a folk singer. So I sat around with an acoustic guitar and tried playing it like a folk song. It's a very strange written song because the bar structure of it is very unusual. The verses are 7 bars long, the chorus is 1 bar long, and it's just a very strange, when you break it down that way, it's a very strangely written song. But that coupled with the fact that, Kim had a great feel for it, and, you know, the portrayal she did was just sensational.
Her vocal on it is there's it's so special. It's raspy yet clear all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, people were saying that she sounded like Rod Stewart when the record came out. She does in a way.
It what? Sorry, was that?
People were saying when the record came out that she sounded like Rod Stewart.
Yeah, I can hear that, but no, I think it was pretty unique.
Yeah.
We're going to hear a new version of that later on in the show. It's we'll talk about that later as to why there's a new version all these years later, and um, we'll get into that later on. Um, you go back. I don't mean to drag that on, but you go back a long ways professionally, um, and you've worked with these interesting artists. You go back to the Mamas and Papas and Buffalo Springfield. That was as an engineer, right?
Well, the Mamas and Papas was their last record that they did together, the four of them.
Uh-huh.
And the Buffalo Springfield stuff was mainly, working with Richie when the band was kind of at the end of their lifespan and they were all kind of working in separate studios. And that's when I first started hanging out with Richie and working with him. And that was kind of like from a production and engineering point of view, which I ended up, oddly enough, after the Poco days, I did his first solo album. And then I just recently did a country record with him.
Yeah, Richie Furay we're talking about from Buffalo Springfield originally. Yeah, I read you just did this country album with him. Is it out yet?
Oh, it's been out for a year now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was, I thought it was more recent than that.
It was an album, it was a concept record. We just did 12 what we all considered iconic country songs.
Uh-huh.
And so they were all basically covers of the original songs, but done completely different than the originals were done.
That sounds really good, really interesting, even if you're not a country fan.
Yeah.
That's got to have a couple of songs for you in there.
Oh, yes. Great songs. I mean, great.
Do you remember a couple of songs? Tell us what's.
Started with 300 songs and ended up with 12. Somebody Like You was a #1 hit, big hit for Keith Urban years ago. I Hope You Dance was a big hit for Leanne Womack years ago. We did, let me see, hang on.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I can't think of them all, but I could grab the album and tell you the titles, but it was a really interesting record,
And we're talking about artists. I mean, you've worked with, it goes from Elton John and Ringo Starr, just different types of artists, quite a wide range. Do you, with Dolly Parton, I guess, Dolly Parton, Donald Byrd, and Sarah Brightman. I mean, these are very different artists. How do you approach that? Do you have to adjust accordingly, or is it just their talent will?
Mike, music. That's
yeah. Okay. Great music.
Just different, styles. I mean, music is defined by style and arrangement. So a good example of that, and I always tell people this, is Ray Charles, who is not a country singer. His first album that was a big hit, I Can't Stop Loving You, it was all country songs done his way. So he made R&B songs,
Yeah. He had to fight for that album too. They didn't want him to do it.
Yeah, right. But it came out and was the biggest record of his career.
Yeah, and one of the biggest records of all time.
But that just shows you it's all music, it's just based on arrangement and the kind of ideas that people have when they're, doing a song. That's why I could do Betty Davis Eyes again. I mean, I was approached 1,000 times to record that with different artists, and I just wouldn't do it because it was such an iconic version, and I didn't want to go there. But when she came to me with the idea to do it as an EDM dance record, that was a completely different avenue to take it on, and that one really interested me because, EDM is kind of the beginnings of the new pop stuff to me,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's interesting that, where you started and where you are now is perfectly up to date. And you seem to have an understanding of it. I keep going to your past. It wasn't that long ago, but in the world of music, you've covered a huge spectrum. But EDM and all, you kind of have to have an understanding of it. How did you latch on to that, if you will? Well,
Katrina has been very involved in it for the last couple of years.
That's the artist who's doing the update?
Katrina Wolverton. I recorded her first solo record about 15 years ago, and we had kind of a mid-chart hit with her. And so 15 years later, she came to me with this idea, and it just intrigued me. And so she knew the venue really well. I mean, she gave me the top 5 singles from last year's Grammy Awards, one of which was Padam, what's her name? the Australian artist, won the Grammy, but
Kylie Minogue.
Kylie Minogue. And so I listened to the top 5 singles, and then I just went into Spotify and listened to a lot of EDM records. And again, it's like I said, it's about arrangement, pretty much, and how they do it. And I'm schooled enough that I could do just about anything. So I just spent a bunch of time working out the programming of the tracks and coming up with the concept. But what I wanted to do was make it mine as well, as opposed to just exactly like all the other EDM records. So it has the EDM pop sensibility, but it also has a good essence of the original.
Have you ever heard this phrase of your sound referred to as punchy bottom?
Yes, many times.
And that's what do you think of that? I mean, obviously you don't disagree, but
I love with bass and drums when I first started engineering. I mean, that's the thing that got me really interested, and so I wanted to find a way to make the bottom end of records, big and punchy. And the guy who taught me, who was a famous engineer, who did all the early Rolling Stones records, which everybody thought were done in England. They were done at RCA Studios in Hollywood by Dave Hassinger. And he's the man who owned and started the Sound Factory. And I went to work for him, and he taught me. And we used to sit in the studio at night when I was his assistant, and I'd play him stuff from the radio and say, listen, how did they do this? How did they do that? And so he gave me his interpretation, and I just sort of developed my style from him giving me those ideas. And one of the things that I've always been noted for is, bottom end of records and the drum sound, punchy, and I love that. I love that sound in a record. I wanted to speak with
people feel it.
Yeah.
Hit them in the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with bands that insisted on, for some reason, kind of spreading their sound out, and you wouldn't feel it. I'd go to the sound guy, talk about live. I go to the sound guy and say, just don't do that. Just bring up the drums, bring up the bass, and you could see the crowd change.
Yes, of course.
Well,
you were in that whole A&M era where some incredible things came out of that.
Yeah, right. The Police and
not just the Police. I mean, Sheryl Crow, and the list goes on for miles.
I was gone from A&M by the time she got there, but
but I'm just saying you were part of the root of that, Jerry and Herb's invention.
Yeah.
Focal point of it, and you had a lot to say. So, I knew David Anderley really well, and he was a great guy, and he had good ideas, and everybody, it was one of those things. Every time I went over there, it was like going to a family reunion.
Yeah. Well, there was one, I don't know if you heard about it, in honor of Jerry Moss, just before Christmas.
His assistant for 35 years was one of my wife's closest friends, and she passed away. And so we went to hers, and then Jerry was at hers, and then when he passed away, we all went to that one. So.
Well, it was a magic night. I got to tell you that reunion, because they explained to people the Muppets people who took over the A&M lot, gave us the lot back for a Saturday evening, and it was probably the first time many of us had been there in like 35 years or something.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, we walked around. We walked down in a daze, because it looked the same, because it's officially you can't change it. It's officially a monument, if you will.
Historical landmark in Hollywood.
Yeah. So we were just walking around there, and Jerry Moss was there with us. It was quite amazing. But anyway, I digress. But it was a beautiful evening, and it brought a lot of people back together.
Yeah.
Under unfortunate circumstances, but it still worked in that way.
Did they celebration inside the big soundstage?
Is it what, sorry?
Inside the big soundstage?
Yeah, we were on the lot, but we went in the soundstage as well. That's where Herb got up and gave a little talk, and
What the event was.
oh yeah, it was
Full, right? 3,000 people.
it was packed, and Herb's speech. I mean, this is a guy he has known since what, he was 21, or I don't know what time they all started. Then it got emotional, and we
Yeah,
said,
well, him and Lou Adler and Jerry were all kind of hanging out together, and in the very beginning.
very beginning they wrote "Wonderful World" for Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
Uh, Jerry didn't, but
That Wonderful World was recorded by Dave Hassinger.
oh really? No, there's a guy.
Oh, he did the Monkees, Last Train to Clarksville. I mean, he was an amazingly talented guy. And
Yeah.
what's funny is he won a Grammy for Best Engineering, and he won it for the Chipmunks. Well, because then to make those voices like that took a lot of innovative talent,
I bet it did. I'll bet it did. Some people just thought you'd speed it up, but no, there was more to it than that.
more than that. But he won a Grammy for that. And that's after the first 3 Jefferson Airplane records, the first 3 Grateful Dead records. I mean, his career was spectacular. Under My Thumb, Satisfaction, 19th Nervous Breakdown, Get Off My Cloud. I mean, all the records were with Dave Hassinger.
Well, we were talking earlier about Richie Furay. We're going to go to a commercial, but we're going to listen to a song you and he had worked on called "Somebody Like You."
Yeah, that's from that album.
Yeah, so we'll be back in a minute or two.
Okay.